him.
I want to watch the news.
Are you making headway at least?
This is the news.
Smack-a-ma-gob, it's time for the only news that matters. And Lars Ulrich's dad, Torbjørn Ulrich, has passed away at the age of 95. The Metallica drummer announced his father's death in social media posts earlier on December 20th, and he wrote, Torbjørn Ulrich, 1928 to 2023, 95 years of adventure, unique experiences, curiosity, pushing boundaries, and challenging the status quo, tennis, music, art, writing, and quite a bit of Danish contrarian attitude. Thank you endlessly. I love you, Dad. Torbjørn Ulrich, who was said to be Metallica's biggest fan and its biggest critic, famously told his son, I would delete that, when asked for an opinion on a new song during the writing sessions of what became 2003's Saint Anger, and a scene immortalized in Some Kind of Monster. And Torbjørn added, as Lars laughed uncomfortably, for me, it doesn't cut it. It sounds like a guy shouting in some kind of echo chamber. Asked in 2005 if he was disappointed that Lars didn't pursue tennis as a career. And Torbjørn said, no, the main thing was that he do what he thought was his choice, not our choice. But in order for him to know that more clearly, we encouraged him to leave Denmark for a year and travel to Florida, to a place that's a tennis academy. And he went there when he was 13 or 14, and he was very interested in tennis at the time. But he was also interested in music. After a year, he still wanted to go out and listen to concerts. And I think that the academy, they were not too keen that he stayed out. So he was reprimanded there for keeping some late hours. In 1995, Lars, who turned 59 this month, stated about his childhood, I grew up in an open and upbringing as you can imagine. Americans will call it spoiled, but I was very independent. I had nothing tying me down. At the same time, anything I wanted, I had to get it myself. In 1975, I went to go see Black Sabbath. As far as my parents were concerned, I could see Black Sabbath 12 times a day, but I had to find my own means, carrying the papers or whatever to get money to buy the tickets. And I had to find my own way to the concert and back. But that point of view, I was left alone a lot. But in terms of culture, there was always shit going on around the house. My dad was always around music. He was hanging out with Sonny Rollins, Don Cherry, Dexter Gordon. Was my godfather. I used to play with Nina Cherry when we were little kids. Her stepfather, Don Cherry, lived like 6 houses from where we lived in Copenhagen, and those types of people were always around. Even though tennis was his main source of income, my dad was also writing about jazz in the paper in Copenhagen, like Miles Davis and so forth, and always playing in the stereo around the house. Later, it was the Doors and Jimi Hendrix. So yeah, my condolences to Lars Ulrich. His dad was so cool in that movie. I think he made that movie. My favorite scene of Some Kind of Monster is his father and Dave Mustaine crying. Like, Dave Mustaine, oh, I hate being number 2. I hate being a millionaire while you guys are gazillionaires. It was a very uncomfortable scene, but I laughed my ass off. It's like, God damn, man, you're successful, you have many fans, but you're pissed off because Metallica has more fans. And this is like, you know, already at that time of the filming, it's been decades, but he's still whining. I've read interviews of him and like, past year or so, whining a bit about, you know, not being in Metallica, and David Ellefson now is rubbing it in, going to Metallica concerts, taking pictures of Metallica, you know, doing interviews talking about how killer Metallica is, just to rub it into Dave. You could just tell that's what's happening. But going back to Lars' dad, man, he lived till 95. He lived a long life. And he was a tennis star over there in Denmark, you know. And he gave birth to somebody that I find is awesome. Yeah, he's dorky in interviews and stuff. He's a total dork. But he helped invent thrash, and his gusto for metal in the early days of Metallica, Lars Ulrich was metal as can be. The president of Motorhead's fan club and traveling around, you know, to see Motorhead, you know, play several shows in California and covering Diamond Head songs, bringing that to the masses, the whole new wave of British heavy metal thing. He compiled a killer CD back in the 90s that was all 2 CD set of all, you know, killer new wave of British heavy metal bands. And he was on top of all that, and Lars was, you know, ahead of his time. I know he's very hated now, but nobody hated Lars Ulrich in the 80s. Nobody. Now it's like people say stuff like, wow, it should have been Lars instead of Cliff Burton. Well, if it would have been Lars instead of Cliff Burton, I think Metallica would have gone more drastic, because Cliff Burton was the most open-minded guy in Metallica at that time, because James and Kirk and Lars, they were all into like metal and hardcore punk and stuff like that, while Cliff was into stuff like ZZ Top, Leonard Skinner, Thin Lizzy. You know, he liked the Misfits. He liked some heavier stuff too, but his Blue Oyster Cult, he was into stuff the other guys were not into. Yet, later on when Cliff died, they all got into it. Started covering all those songs. Started covering Blue Oyster Cult, Leonard Skinner, you know, Thin Lizzy, all these bands that Cliff loved. And I wish he would have lived, but I wouldn't want Lars to die. Yes, Lars has done a lot of boneheaded stuff, though I do think he was right when it comes to Napster. But that's beyond the point, because the whole Napster thing and the illegal downloading has gone down a lot, so that's not really an issue anymore. The damage was done. It killed music, destroyed records companies and all that, and Lars was trying to fight it for that to stop. Didn't happen. So everything was demolished, and then streaming took over. And that's what's killing rock now and killing music business, is streaming, not illegal downloading, because barely anybody illegally downloads, because we live now in a generation that wants stuff streaming. We don't want to save stuff on the computer and stuff like that. Well, I do. I'm just talking about the masses out there. They just want to go on Spotify and listen to their hits, and you know, same thing with movies. They'd rather stream it at home instead of going to a movie theater. Everything is fucked now. But back to Lars' dad. My deepest condolences to Lars and his family and everybody that was close to him. It's a very sad day, but he lived a long life. It's still no excuse. He should have lived to 100 at least. 5 more years, but still. He's a great dad. He gave birth to somebody that changed music forever, that I will always appreciate. I don't care how bad Metallica turned out after, you know, those first 3 incredible albums. I will always love Lars, Kirk, James, and Cliff for what they did in the 80s, and I'm a big fan of Hardwired too. So, rest in peace, Torbjørn Ulrich. And thank you all for watching The Only News That Matters. And please, subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And ring that little notification bell. And hey, leave comments down there. What do you feel about Torbjørn Ulrich and Lars Ulrich and Metallica and whatever? You know, you people that love it or hate it, whatever. Leave your comments. Let it all out. Because my channel welcomes every comment in the world, as long as you're respectful. And like the video. It's good for the YouTube algorithms. So stay frosty, listen to Black Sabbath, and smack 'em macabre.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain. For we've received orders for to sail back to Boston. And so never more shall we see you again.